few stragglers, but thanks people who went home quickly and wanted to hear the words of Martha. And she didn't want a whole big intro. All she wanted to say is that she moved to River Forest for when she was 4 years old, her family, and she's been coming to First Pres for 45 years. I think that was after her 4th birthday sometime. But I'm very excited. She was someone that I really wanted to hear her story, and so excited that she said yes, because she's just been a pillar from my last 30 years here, just watching her and just seeing her. She's been an inspiration, just how she carries herself in that church. So I'm very happy to hear from her. All right, Martha, take it away.
Okay. I have to say at the very beginning that I feel that I am inadequate to tell you how God has been so a part of my life and the blessing that I have received and the just happens that have happened in my life. So I was hesitant to come because there are so many giants in our church, but then I did pray about it. And the Lord said, look, Martha, you're going to be fine. And I really have touched your life, and I think you need to tell people. So here we go. My Bible verse today is Philippians 4:13. It is a verse I have hung on to for a long time. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. And it's a verse that I send up right now. To begin with, I am a child of God. I claim his continued forgiveness, faithfulness, preservation, and resurrection power. Have you ever heard of anybody putting one foot in the bathtub and one out? Or someone that hangs on to something special but then puts away when it's useless? That's kind of how my faith has been, I think. God must be kind of smiling and thinking, uh-oh, Martha, here you go again. Because I often haven't given all of myself to God. What's more, I have told God how to fix things. You know, I think this is really how it should be, and it's true. And God has been very patient with me. To introduce myself, my name is Martha Woods. I live in River Forest. I was born in River Forest. When I was 4, I had a strict, loving father, Scott's father, strict, loving, soft mother, and a brother who was 4.5 years older than I am. I have to begin this, and that may seem weird telling you this, but I was born early in my mother's pregnancy. She was not well, and they induced me. And I was 3.5 pounds. Now I have to add this to you that was from 85 years ago. And so they told me, Dad, that I wouldn't live and not to bother to name me. And so while they were tending to Mom's health, he named me after his side of the family. We never stopped hearing about that. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that God saved my life. And I have never forgotten it. And I have had a sense of God's person. I don't know of presence, but I've always known I was special, not in a competitive way, but just in a way of the past. I went to River Forest schools, high school. In the high school, we had prayer groups, which they probably never would do now. I was on the tennis team. I was social. It was fun. It was good fun. I attended Ohio Wesleyan, and I graduated in 58. It was a Methodist school and had a Greek system and was a good school for me. I got my education degree. We went to chapel 3 times a week. And the reason I mention this is that one of the first years or sometime in the chapel, if you all went to chapel or if your kids have, you know, it's a good time for sleeping. And this man walked up to the podium and he looked at us. He was a nice sized man. He had a presence. And he said, "You are not problems to be solved. You are lives to be lived." And obviously it's been a while and I have never forgotten it and I like it. And this is what I would say to our youngsters, that they are important in life. They are lives to be lived. So I left college. I was on God's team. You know, we always think when we're on God's team, he's going to work out and there's never going to be any blemishes. And there wasn't. I had a wonderful encounter with a friend of mine who I knew, and his name was George Woods. I had dated George off and on. He was 3 years ahead of me. He lived in River Forest. His family, he was a child of a second marriage, and his mother's side were all Catholics, and his father was a Presbyterian. And if you've ever gone by and seen Mill's house in Oak Park, that was the house that George's mother was raised in. And he played tennis. He was a friend of my brother's. He was back he graduated from Williams and had then gone to officer candidate school for Navy Air. And he was back when I graduated, going to Northwestern's business school, which I don't know if it was Kellogg or not. So we started dating in October. We got engaged in January and we married in June, and we were 22 and 25. When I was pregnant with Ann, George finished school and we moved to Waukegan. He started an office for a firm in Waukegan. It was very successful. I'm sure, I know that it's still open now. One day I got lonely and teary. So the next thing I knew, he arrived home with a box, and in the box was this new puppy that he proudly told me only cost $5. After a year, we came back to Oak Park. We lived on Grove. Life was smooth. We went to the Oak Park Presbyterian Church, and there was a young new pastor named Dave Woldermulder, who has since gone to, at least had gone then to the mainline Presbyterian Church. And a lot of their members did come over after he left. In the meantime, we had Susan, another daughter, in 63, and we had Carol in 65. And also, I was in that, we were there 5 years, and we moved to River Forest, to my dream house. It was on 521 Keystone, and we sold it to the Raffenspergers. And so some of you really have been into it. And I had mixed feelings about moving, but it seemed the right thing, and George wanted to do it. We moved to Minneapolis, where he started another office for a firm, and I don't remember what firm he was with. And we were Methodists there. Then we'd like the Presbyterian Church was just colonizing in I think Minnetonka, and it was just really a busy time, and they expected a lot, and we did not feel we had the time. We loved our Methodist church. My activities included Vacation Bible School, and then I do some things in the pantry downtown. I realized that Minnesota it's changed since then, or at least they've gotten bad press. But it happened about a year and a half when we were there that the firm, the to-dos in New York, decided that to be a manager, you should be on the retail side, and George was on the institution broker side. So he was replaced, and it was a sad experience, and it was a hard one for George. It really was, because it was very successful. But anyway, we moved back decided to move back to River Forest, and on Labor Day, we moved back, and we're delighted to be home. You know, around that time, there was a lot of unrest. Martin Luther King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was killed. And so when we came back to River Forest, We had friends who had moved to Hinsdale, and we had friends who bought guns. We did not do that. We had George and his friends, two of his friends, one an accountant, one a lawyer, started a black business. And I don't know too many of the details of it, but we were all in favor of doing that and providing jobs that provided income, that provided benefits. And that we were very new. You weren't hearing much about black businesses in that time. The long and the short it was a key punch business. And it was a lady who had done it and worked there, and she like got Sears business. But the long and the short was that she probably should have had more supervision, or nice people, good people. So they closed it down after about a year, and it was a business decision, and it probably was a good decision. However, George always felt that probably they didn't do her any favor. They wanted, their hearts were in it. They were businessmen, and he said if anybody was affected about it, with it, maybe her son was, maybe he saw it. But what they did was that then they didn't leave until they had everything done, so she wasn't going to be beholden to the government. Around that time, we had a transfer of all the pastors, and Bill Proctor and Bill Williamson were our interim pastors between two pastors. And there was unrest. The church was, we were restless. And so a group of us decided that what we were going to do, that we were worried about our church. We love our church. We'd all been there long enough. So we formed a Bible prayer group that met every Wednesday. We brought our lunches, and you went to Arlene's house, a condo, and we met every Wednesday for years until Arlene went into the senior home. Those ladies were myself, Arlene, Nancy Nicholas, Glenda, Madge Hauser, and Cheryl Armstrong. Many of you might not know Cheryl's. She just died. Nancy Nicholas is a really good friend of hers, and she was studying to be a pastor and eventually had a church in Barrington. On the home front, the girls were growing. We had grandmothers, and it was, it's really a nice life. The kids went from middle to high school. I will say there were a couple wrinkles there. I don't know if George and I were really prepared for high school, but I'll tell you, it was nothing like it is now. And we had a few things happen, dog eating someone's pot, and then the girl coming back and wanting to know where her pot is, if you can believe that. And it really was a time where I learned, with unhappy teenagers, it took God's entire love to love them. It's not a time that I think I do a better job next time. That's what I'm saying. They went to school, graduated, and came back, and worked with teaching in Oak Park. Susan went to WashU for law school, and Carol started working with Anderson Consultings. We had 3 weddings in 1 year. Susan married Chris McGraw from St. Louis. He is also a lawyer. He's a judge now. He and Suze met when they were they were working with the public defenders, thanks, Ann. Public defenders, death penalty cases. Pretty gruesome stuff. And Carol met and fell in love with Troy Eber, who she worked with, and Ann, of course, who knew Marty then and started dating him. And also, I can just tell you this little secret: Marty dated her one of her sisters too. Oh, you went to a dance, she said to tell me. I'm sorry. So life became good. I was inching up and letting loose a little bit. George and I went to church. We were very involved with church. He taught Sunday school. I taught kindergarten, and both of those were good for both of us. Our church had a lot of activities going on, and life was good. We were thankful and for all of our blessings, and except that I started to look at George and I knew something was wrong, and I was terrified. And now I know Steve did his sermon today on not being afraid, but I have to tell you, there's times I've been many afraid. So therefore, Tom Comey, who he talked to, had suggested from his friend, a doctor, that he might have Parkinson's disease. And so the long and the short is that George was diagnosed with Parkinson's. I knew what it was. My dad had had it, but Dad had been 88 at the time that he had it. And I remember when I heard the message from the doctor on the phone saying that he thought he had Parkinson's, I remember saying out loud, I know life will be good, but it will never be the same. And it was good, and it was never the same. George had 10 good years, 6 not so good. We were able to travel. Oh, in the meantime, I forgot, we had 8 grandchildren, all 6 months apart. You know, not the same family, obviously. And they were wonderful, and we welcomed them. And I don't know about you all who have grandchildren, or if you that don't, I will tell you they are the dessert of life. Well, getting back to George, eventually we had a caregiver during the day at home. I think I was just kind of numb at the end. I can remember going to the grocery store in the week before he died and walking in and thinking, you know, everybody looks at life as so normal. Don't you know my husband is dying? I mean, it just, I was not prepared for it. Therefore, I have to tell you that I have so much adoration and thanksgiving for George's strength, courage, determination that he received from God through God's resurrected power. And I have to again tell you, if you ever hesitate or forget people who are in a dire situation and think, oh, they'll have lots of prayers, really do pray for them. The family gets to the point where it's really hard to pray. Anyway, the long and the short of it was that George died on October 17th, 2009. His funeral was a wonderful celebration of his person in life. Rich Davis and John Hayes did it. We celebrated George, his sense of humor, his active intelligence, his love, his faith, what he had done in life, and who the person he was. And most of all, I know the family celebrated that he was free. Also, I'd like to mention Rich Davis and John Hayes and George's Bible study group. They were so supportive and loving. The Bible study group picked him up every Friday, even during the bad months, for him to have Bible study with them. And I just cannot tell you. These are things that you don't always know. So I became a widow. I can remember the day the kids went home that I went out and talked to them, and probably my knees were knocking, but I told them how I was going to be fine. I was very loved, that God would take care of me. And of course, I was mourning and sad. And I walked back in the house after they left and went into the bedroom, and the dog, who was Millie at the time, went and put all of her toys and treasures on my bed. And that made me smile. About 8 or 9 years ago, I moved to Franklin. We found this house, the little house that I love. And that's where I am now, and my kids are here. And I've lived here for about 8 years. I've had a couple of incidents of ripples in my life, which I say only because of God's response and presence to me. The first was when I was 75, I was on the phone talking to someone and we were arguing. And the next thing I knew, I was in a hospital wheelchair with Don Kurth and Rich Davis walking me to my room. And I don't quite know. I think Rush, I was at West Suburban. I think Rush thinks I had a small stroke or a TIA. And fortunately, Anne had, all the kids were gone. They were on vacation. We were going to go to Michigan in 2 days. Fortunately, Anne called Gail Tittle and she put me on the prayer chain. So by the time they got home, those of you on the prayer chain had been praying for me for many hours. And the next day when Suze walked in with her coffee and paper, like I used to do for George, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you are back." Amen. The next hiccup was when I was 80, I was confused, and it turned out that my brain wasn't getting much blood. And so I went to the hospital and had tests, and the doctor came in to tell us that 30% of my heart was working. That's not such a good number. And anyway, I ended up staying in the hospital. This was at Rush. I stayed in the hospital about 3 weeks because I also had the flu. So this was a turning point. And by then I knew that I had no choice whether I wanted to or not, was to turn my complete life over to the Lord, because there were things that I needed help in. I have limitations. I take 10 pills a day. I don't drive, which had worked out. My dad and my husband both were taken off driving at a certain time. And I just kept thinking, well, you know, if they figured it out, even though they had me, I will. And it's fine. It's where I am. And you know what? I'm here. Life has been good for me. God has been faithful. I have been human. I have been convicted. I know I am loved. That's a big thing. This is what people have trouble with, not to know they're loved in spite of how you are. And I'm so grateful to our church. I don't think I have really praised them enough for planting the seed, for following through. And I bet there's a lot of people that are thinking right now, yes, our church has really, really been there when I need them. And we all know the Lord has. So I don't worry as much anymore. I do forget things. I walk slower, but you know what? I know who I am and I know whose I am. Thanks a lot. Take care. Happy Father's Day to all of you. And to us who don't have fathers, let's bask in the sunshine of our memories.
Wait, Martha, I got to ask you a couple things. Martha.
Yes.
Couple things. You said two things like right back to back with all the stuff in the 60s was going on with the rioting and Kennedy and
yeah.
And then right after that, you said that you were afraid for the church and you started that Bible
Yeah,
study.
we were kind of
Was
divided.
that part of it? Were you afraid of, like, for our
Well, we
country
had,
and
I prefer not to go into it because I have an opinion. And George, actually, I think George was one of the people that made that decision to have the pastors here who were very, very well liked and very good, be interim. And they went to the presbytery, and the presbytery told them that was not a good idea. Their thought being that it would make it difficult for the next pastor. And they went ahead and did it. And who knows? I have to tell you that God has been so faithful to this church. I didn't tell you how wonderful Dr. Ball was. All of our pastors have brought an element of love and grace to our church. But anyway, that's your answer.
so also you said that when you were born and they thought to not name you and they said that you weren't going to live, did you ever feel like a responsibility, like, okay, I have a mission. God, you saved me, even though I was a premature baby and premature babies didn't survive
Yes.
with that. So you saved me
Yes.
for a reason. Have you ever
Yes.
felt
Yes, I
that?
did. Yeah, but
Okay.
I also, Terry, at some points, felt I was responsible for my mother's health. And she had toxemia. And we had live-in help till I was 4. We had a nanny in Mill Park, and then when we moved to River Forest, we had a woman who lived there and helped. So I wasn't going to bring that up just because that's just my problem, but it kind of goes with the territory. But I always felt love. And my father was strict. He was 6 feet 3 or 4, and when he used to tell me when I was born, he would show me his hand, and I was just the size of his hand. There's no question in my mind, yes, that God, that I was loved immediately, and I was special, and I feel I'm special today because God, who knows me better than anyone and died for me, and I just have to learn to forgive myself when I do dumb things or bad things. So, because he does, that's what people really need. And we all try to do it ourselves. And I have been one that has to. So you don't want another sermon.
So another thing too, is you said that you really didn't turn your life over to God until maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So
No,
you said
I did. I would really literally do it, and then I would forget about it. Yeah, but that was a significant moment for me. That was significant because I was in bed, and I know Steve wouldn't like this, but I was scared. I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I gave all of myself. I would put it that way.
So does that mean you stopped telling God how to do his job? Because at the beginning you said you many times have told God how to do his job.
Yeah, I know. But we women like control. And I still pray for my children. You're never home free as your children. I have to tell you for a second, I've talked long enough. My children, my daughter, Anne, as you all know, and she is immeasurably helpful now where I am. And, has the 4 children and teaches at Oak Park Nursery, a Congregational Church. Sue is now teaching law in the clinic at St. Louis. And Carol has, and her husband have started social homes, senior homes rather. And they, in Denver, and she had a terrifying experience of being with people. Well, one house got the COVID, got the virus through a worker whose wife left him for another man, and then she came back with it, gave it to him, and he gave it to the house. He was a good worker. I mean, there's no throwing stones. These things happen. But Carol was there a lot. She does it 724. They own 5 houses. And she was there a lot because she didn't want to send anybody else in, because then they would get sick, and she and her family had it. And so I don't know if she would say this, but God really was upon her. It was a hard time for lots of people.
Anybody else have a question?
Well, I'd just like to say, if you look at our church and Martha's impact on it, our facilities manager is her son-in-law,
Yes, yes,
and the youth director is her grandson.
yeah.
So you've had an impact right there.
Well, indirectly, I think I've been kind of a backseater, but I just loved our church. I love the people in it. It's fun. There's all kinds of people. The one that I really became close to after Mom died was Arlene Tyshin, who was very instrumental in being with me and all of us. And when we formed that prayer group, I was really kind of out of my league. I mean, I prayed, I've always prayed, but these were really senior prayers. And it was wonderful to be, and you know what? We had so much fun. So did I miss anything?
Well, Martha, this is Bill. I just want to relay a little bit about George. When Allison and I first moved to River Forest about year 2000, I didn't know George. I didn't know his sense of humor. And my letter of membership from Westminster Pres in Springfield was sent to River Forest. And I guess that's something that he, as an elder, voted on or whatever. So he comes up to me after the service, puts his hand out. I thought, what a nice guy. So I grab his hand, I shake it. He goes, congratulations. Then he pulled me real close and he said, it was a very close vote.
That was his humor.
I didn't know this guy. I was like, wow.
He was and is the love of my life. I do miss him. But when he was so sick, he just couldn't live like that. And I will tell you, if I may give one more praise, would be to Allison. She has been when I've gone to the hospital, she's been there before my daughters. So I have been well cared for.
Martha, we love you so much.
Oh,
and what I was going to say is, I think it was Larry. I don't know who shared. There's so much going on at our church that's thanks to Martha, and Martha has this generous spirit. She's always giving, and not just financially. And Martha, I mean, I've met your other 2 daughters, but of course I know Anne the best. And when you raise up a daughter that loves Jesus that much, I mean, you did something right, because for 21 years I've worked here at this church, and about 10 or 11 of them I've taught confirmation class, and at least half of every class says they're so thankful for Ann Bell teaching them about Jesus. And so I give half the credit for that to you, because you and your wonderful George raised Ann up to know him. And so man, I think that the exponential jewels in your crown here, you're just we just love you to pieces.
Oh, my crown's crooked. But I do love life, and I am loved. And I have to tell you, I didn't say too much about thankfulness, but that is a big one. And it's, whenever you get depressed or I get depressed or discouraged or limited, I just go back and just go back over how much God has affected my life and loved me. And the person of Jesus has involved me. And, but I'm not perfect. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not perfect. And I like not being perfect. I like being just me. And I guess for more information, you'd have to talk to my daughters, and you might get an entirely different read. But I just am here to say that I have been blessed, and you the staff. Oh my, Paul has done such a good job. He really has. And so, you know, Dave Robertson was kind of the beginning, that he was younger and we had lots of young people. I just, one time I said, I shouldn't put this on the record, that I tried to see the good in people, because this was how my mom was. And the girls were there and they said, well, Mom, you don't always do that. So wisdom comes from those you love. And I've been really working hard at that. Well, that's it. Maybe.
Martha, thank you so much. That was a great inspiration for all of us. And it's just nice.
Well-
It's nice to see your journey, and we all know that can be encouraged that the journey goes on and that it changes.
Oh,
and
yes. Oh,
yeah,
yes.
no, I think
Oh,
that
yes.
that's so great. Thank you for your
Well,
honesty.
you know, I didn't want to do it. And then I prayed about it and the Lord said, you know, I've done a lot for you. I think you should do it. So I'm glad it's over.
All right, well, okay, thank you. So anyway, next week, we're gonna finish our Where is God series, and Kim Wojak is talking about Where is God with women of domestic violence. So she's on the board at Sarah's Inn. Okay, see you next week. Enjoy Father's Day, those of you that are celebrating, and thank you so much, Martha.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.